Am I live? Yes, I am live on Facebook, which is good. So let me just go live on Instagram. Okay, so yes, I'm now live on Instagram. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen, and I am the founder of the Art of Greatness and a racial trauma therapist. Really good to see you. I've not done a live stream for a couple of weeks. I feel like I needed to have a little bit of a break. There's been lots been going on behind the scenes. Hi Gloria, thanks for joining. But yeah, I wanted to jump on today to talk to you about body psychotherapy and what that means for black bodies. I'm currently in a process at the minute where I've been reading this book. I've read it before, but My Grandmother's Hands. I don't know if you know this book, but yeah, not only have I been reading this book, but I've also been working with the author, doing like a just understanding his process and his methods and his rituals and all of that sort of stuff. And it's been a really fascinating journey so far. I'm halfway through. I've got another 4 or 5 months to go. It's a 9 month process that I'm in with this, and yeah, it's been just such an amazing journey. And so I'm at the stage now where I'm ready to kind of teach an introductory session with the people in my mastermind so that they can also learn how important it is and what it's about. There's a lot of a lot of additional tools and stuff that I've got. I mean, he refers to them as toys, somatic toys. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to be able to do that. So I'm going to be teaching the introductory class on Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. London time. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, then you can click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. And today's session, live stream, is basically just to give you a little bit of insight as to what body psychotherapy is, or body psychology. Sorry, not body psychotherapy. Well, it kind of is. They're kind of interlinked, those two things. But yeah, today I just wanted just to open up the conversation so that you can get a bit of an idea as to what I'm going to be teaching on Wednesday. So, for those of you that don't know anything about me, so I'm a trauma therapist, a racial trauma therapist in particular, and I work predominantly with black women, and I help them experience unapologetic self love. And I do that by exploring the relationship to the mother wound, systems of oppression, and relationship with self. I look at the relationship between all those parts, and we unpack a lot of stuff and all of that. So I'm also a coach as well, a business coach. I'm also a recovery coach. I'm also what else do I do? I'm a speaker. I'm a retreat facilitator, and I absolutely love what I do. I absolutely love what I do. I'm also in recovery as well. So sometimes I'll share my experience of stuff in recovery. I work with a lot of clients that are also in recovery. So, if you're suffering from addiction, compulsive behaviors, codependency, all of that stuff, whether it's food or whatever, I do have some spaces for you to join me if you need support with that. So again, you can click the link in my bio and find out all of the details around that. So let's get into the content. So as I was saying before, I want to talk to you today about body psychology and the importance of it. I want to share just kind of three different things to think about what body psychology is, what it means, why it's important for us as black people, as black women. And I'll just give you a little bit of a taster as well as to what's going to be happening in the class on Wednesday. So yeah, as I said, I've been working with Reshma, who wrote that book, My Grandmother's Hands, since February, and I've just learned a lot. I mean, his expertise is racialized trauma and understanding white body supremacy and the impact that it has on our well-being and our ability to be able to thrive and grow as a community. And yeah, so it's been really interesting just seeing, just gaining a lot more awareness around what's happening, and as a collective, how we kind of interact with each other as well as a result of what's happened to us and continues to happen to us under the system of racism and whatever other oppressions that there are. So the first thing that I want you to think about today is and why body psychology is important is because it connects the mind and the body. Now, the most, what we always talk about, or what's always kind of given priority, is, intellect, logic, thought, all of that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is the thing that people tend to value most. And so a lot of times we get stuck in our heads. Okay, we get stuck in our heads about things. We think that if we can think something, a lot of times when people talk about knowledge of self as well, a lot of times they're referring to intellect, what books they've read, what they understand intellectually, and all of that kind of stuff. But what happens with that is that the body doesn't get recognized. The body continues to be numb. We continue to be disconnected from our bodies because we're constantly thinking about logic and what that means and what we should be doing and all of that kind of stuff. Our body gets left behind. And I think sometimes, well, a lot of times, the body gets left behind because it doesn't feel safe for us to be able to drop down from our heads into our bodies. We don't have the tools, we don't have the resources, we don't always have the resilience to actually drop down in our bodies and start having those conversations. And if you think about the charge of racism, Reshma talks a lot about the charge of racism and how there's 400-500 years of charge behind it. So when we think about that energy in our bodies, okay, and what our bodies and what our ancestors who were enslaved, what they endured, that is going to have an impact on how we feel about our blackness and our black bodies, and actually being in the world inside a black body is going to have an impact on us. So the importance of understanding and using body psychology to include it in our work means that we're going to connect the two between what we're thinking, okay, and what is actually going on in the body. We create spaces and we create dialogue and we create language to be able to really sit inside the body, and even if we can't sit inside the body, we're able to experience what's going on for us, because it's not going to be safe for us to go into the body straight away. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, and we need to understand what our body is trying to tell us, what our body is trying to let us know, what feels safe, what doesn't feel safe. So having that connection between the two is really, really important. And to be able to think beyond talking therapy and think more about what is actually going on for us at a visceral level is absolutely crucial to get a holistic idea of what our healing and recovery means for us. Okay, so that's the first one, the mind-body connection. Number two is embodiment and self-awareness. Okay, and that is a little bit of what I was saying before about our ability to be present in our bodies, and how for so many of us that it just feels unsafe. And I think when we're talking about the embodiment as well of what's going on for us and our self-awareness, we're not just talking about the intergenerational stuff that's been passed down to us in terms of racism, in terms of our enslaved ancestors and all of that, what happened to us under the system of white body supremacy. We also have to think about the trauma and the pain that we've also endured within our families of origin, because that's not always talked about. We can talk about what's happened in terms of the system. We can talk about what's happened in terms of enslavement of our ancestors and that stuff that's been passed down. But a lot of us are also holding the pain in our tissues from what happened to us. Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for joining. Of what happened to us within the context of what happens within our family of origin. So that's also a really, really important part, So we need to think about this as well. When we talk about embodiment and self-awareness, doing it collectively is really important. Doing it as a safe group is really, really important. And I know that can be really hard for a lot of us because, like I was saying before, within our family of origin, we experience pain. Within, as a collective, we experience pain from society. So to actually think about sitting with a group of people and doing this work, it can be excruciating. And I know from my own personal experience, it's taken me a long time, and I still find it hard sometimes. If I'm feeling particularly vulnerable, it can be hard sometimes to sit with a group of black people and do this work. But, we, as Reshma says, we were we were targeted as a collective, we were targeted as a community around this work, the external work. So it's important for us to be able to do this work also in a community that feels safe for us. We have to be discerning in choosing the community that we do. And one of the ways that I, create a safe space in my membership, because I have like a monthly membership, where we talk about a lot of this stuff, is, we put the stuff out on the table to talk about it. We talk about the mistrust with black women. We talk about, I recently did in March, I did a workshop on healing the black mother wound, and we were able to talk about how our mistrust of other black women quite often comes from that. It's also external as well, but it's about looking at it from all the different angles. Okay, it's about looking at it from all the different angles and thinking about, where does that narrative come from? Why is it that even at a visceral level, sometimes we find it hard to be around our own people because of the stuff that happened to us within our family of origin. So all of this stuff is really, really important to think about. It's important for us to have the conversation. It's important for us to take that into consideration when we are doing our talking therapies as well, because the body it can also be a really powerful tool for us to learn from and to teach us all of these different things. So, but then on the context of embodiment and awareness, I just want to read this section from the book that I thought was just really profound when he's talking about awareness in the body and stuff like that. So, okay, so I'm reading from the section on, where was it? The false, what's it called? Okay, it's called The False Fragility and the White Body. Okay, so okay, so it says, when talking with white people, we may carefully avoid topics we think might trigger their defenses, such as inequality, oppression, social issues, and especially race. Some of us never veer from small talk. We try to protect ourselves from protecting white people from their own fears about us. For many African Americans, this collusion becomes second nature, a protective, reflexive response. Just as many white bodies go on alert when they sense a black body nearby, many black bodies also go on alert when they sense a white one in the vicinity. But there is a crucial difference here. The white body tends to shift into immediate self-protection, but the black body is habituated to shift into soothing the white body as a self-protective strategy. Okay, let me read that bit again. Okay, there's a crucial difference here. The white body tends to shift into immediate self-protection, but the black body is habituated into shifting into soothing the white body as a self-protective strategy. So one of the ways that when I read that, and I thought about when people talk about code switching as well, that's kind of an example of how that actually shows up. Oh, somebody's asking me I'm reading from. So I'm reading from My Grandmother's Hands, yeah, by Reshma Mencken. Okay, so think about that. Think about how what happens in your body when you're around white bodies, and the more of the work that I've been doing with Reshma and reading this book, I'm kind of noticing how my body's starting to respond when I'm around white people. Do I have anxiety, a low level anxiety that comes up? Do I feel safe? Sometimes what I can also sense in myself is that there's a part of me that wants to be small. There's a sense of, oh my gosh, am I really allowed to be my full self when I'm around white people? And it's very subtle. It's very, very subtle. Do you have like a heightened sense of awareness around the topics that you want to talk about? Is your tone a lot softer? Do you find that, if you're going into certain white spaces, is there certain types of clothing or whatever that you don't want to wear, or that you don't want to, do you know what I mean? It's like, how are we censoring ourselves when we go into these spaces, and what happens internally? What, is there fear, is there shame, is there confusion when you go into these white spaces? And I would in addition to that, I would also ask if you do the same when you're in black spaces. If you were raised in a home that was abusive, that was controlling, that was difficult, painful, all that, violent, all that sort of stuff, do you find yourself feeling the same way when you're around black bodies? Okay, because I know that was my experience. When I first started doing my own work in therapy, I found it very triggering being around other black bodies, because it would just trigger a lot of my old stuff, and I felt unsafe. So in addition to what the book talks about in terms of the whiteness conversation and the stuff that happens externally, think about as well how you respond within your family of origin and how that plays itself out, because that's also an important part of it. Sometimes I think it can be easy for us to always make the conversation about whiteness. Yes, we know that that's a huge part of it. Yes, we know it's systemic. Yes, we know that systemically it's horrendous in terms of the pressure that we're under, the violence that we're under, the terrorism that we're under, all of that. We know that. But an important part of doing the community work, the important part of doing the community work with each other is also understanding what comes up for you in terms of the family of origin stuff. So somebody's saying, I found this hard to admit to myself. Yes, it is hard to admit. It's painful to admit. And so I think a lot of times people will just focus on what whiteness is doing, and how whiteness is doing this and whiteness is doing that. Yes, we know that, but again, the holistic part of it and understanding, and the importance of doing this stuff in community is also being able to have that honest conversation with yourself around how does my own blackness get triggered because of what happened in my family of origin. How does all of that violence and stuff that I experienced or witnessed or whatever, how does that, make me feel about going into a space and being vulnerable with other black people? And it's a real thing. And I think a lot of people more people need to have this conversation. And these are the things that, I talk a lot about in my membership. I talk a lot about this in my membership with the ladies, because this is a conversation that is very difficult to have, number one, and number two, once we've had that conversation, then what do we do about it? And I think what happens is 9 times out of 10, when I bring that conversation into the space for people to talk about, there's immediate relief. Okay, because 9 times out of 10, most people think that they're the only one they're the only one that feels like that, and that they can't really say it. Maybe some people feel ashamed because they feel like that. They're like, oh gosh, I can't believe I feel like that about my own people. So they don't really want to talk about it because they don't really think that anybody else feels the same. But 9 times out of 10, when I bring up that topic of conversation, most people in the room have that anxiety. Most people in the room have that anxiety because of the violence or the pain that they've experienced within their own family of origin. So this is an important part. This is an important part of this process of doing this work in community, because then as soon as we've had that conversation, then we can start to talk about, okay, well, what happened? What happened in your family of origin that's created this this part of you that feels that you need to reject that part of yourself. Your melanated self has to have been exiled. That melanated part of yourself has to have been put over to the side. So when you're around other black bodies again, all of that stuff can get activated, and people don't always understand that that's what's happening to them. So they just stay away from from doing the vulnerable work in community, because then they can just say, oh well, I don't trust other black women, or I don't trust other black people, or whatever, and just put it down to that, and they just that's their core belief. And because their experience of it is so painful that it's just too vulnerable, it becomes too vulnerable, But this is where, in community, in the space that I have, in the mastermind that I do, boundaries are really important, and making sure that everybody has a voice, and making sure that there's mutual respect, and making sure that there's a lot of compassion, a lot of compassion, for people to make it safe for them to begin to speak. So that other people don't shame them for their own thoughts and feelings, and letting people have their own experience. I think a lot, I would say 9 times out of 10, most people just want to be heard. Most people just want to be heard. And a lot of times the pain around a lot of this work is they weren't heard. Their pain was not heard. So whether we're talking about pain within the family of origin, or whether we're talking about pain within the system of racism, our pain doesn't matter. Our pain is irrelevant. So having those 2 layers of people saying that your pain is irrelevant, it makes sense why people find it difficult to go into a space and then want to be vulnerable with other black people, and just talking about therapy as well and stuff like that. Like it took me years to actually start seeing a black therapist. Okay. This wasn't a conscious thing. I initially went to white therapists first, because it was just too painful for me. It was too triggering for me to actually sit down with another black person and do this work, so I understand the complexities of what this means. I didn't understand it at the time, but obviously over time, I sort of began to realize that, oh, that's the reason why I find this difficult, or that's the reason why I find it hard to be vulnerable around other black people. So it's only now that I understand, I really, really understand that. And which is why I'm vocal about this stuff. This is why I'm vocal about all of this stuff, because, you know, people, I'm saying this stuff that a lot of my clients think, a lot of people that I speak to think, but they don't know how to articulate. They don't understand what's happening to them. So for me to be able to name it, to be able to claim it, and I help people to understand what's going on for them, can be quite liberating to be able to do that. Okay, so really think about those things. Think about those things, and this is where the self-awareness part comes in. This is where the self-awareness part comes in, so we can begin to understand, why or what, why or why not people feel disconnected from their bodies, why they find it hard to actually be present in their bodies, why does it feel so difficult for people, and why do they kind of stay from the neck up, so they can, intellect and logic is fine, but there's a disconnect underneath. And that's the, that's the part of you that's trying to protect you from the trauma. That's the part of you that's trying to protect you from the tenderness of what it means to actually surrender and yeah, surrender to the embodiment of what it means to be present in a black body. And that can show up in many, many different ways. But it's important. It's important to have that sort of sense of awareness so that you can move forward and begin to approach your recovery and your healing process in a much more embodied way, and not just thinking about logic and intellect and all of that kind of stuff. Because you can get trapped in that. You can think that you're doing the work by just thinking it and understanding it logically, but meanwhile the body is still in chaos. Your nervous system is not regulated, and things still get triggered because the body is still responding to things in a way that's traumatic. And so that mind body connection and that true self-awareness and embodiment is such a crucial part. Okay, so that's number two. The last one that I want to talk about is the somatic part of it, the somatic healing. So the healing part of it is kind of like what I was saying before. When we combine the two, we combine the body based practices with the intellect. Okay, we combine what we think with what's going on in the body, what we're feeling, and how we feel, and what we're thinking, and what's going on at a visceral level is basically what I'm going to be teaching on Thursday in the mastermind. We're going to be looking at different ways to think about not just what we think and feel, but what is the experience. There's a process that Reshma uses to help people to get into their bodies and what to do, and what to do with all of that energy, how to understand the energy and what to do with it, making sense of it, so that on a day-to-day basis you use this, what he calls a toy box. You use this toy box of things that you can use, this approach, to help you to kind of understand what's going on in your body and what to do about it. So there are practices that you're going to learn that you'll be able to do at home. And, I'm going to be encouraging the ladies in my group as well to start to practice it. And I'm going to be using this process across all of the different classes that I teach, because again, that embodiment of what's going on in the, what's happening at a visceral level, at a vibrational level, all of that stuff needs to be talked about, so that our bodies can start to process and start to really to move the energy that's stuck on all of that. We can move it into a space of understanding and more compassion and more love and more instead of feeling stuck in with all of the energy, you start to feel like you're befriending it. You're befriending it in a much, much different way. So somebody's saying, how can we join the masterclass? If you click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. There's a tab there that says, join the Sacred Sister Sanctuary. If you click on that, you can join. You can join the class. You'll be able to join the masterclass. But you'll be able to join the membership basically, and that's how you get access to the masterclass, because it's not a separate thing. It's actually part of the actual class, the actual part of the mastermind itself. So if you've got any problems or anything signing up, just send me a DM or whatever, and I can support you with that. But what I might do is I'll send you a link. I'll send you a direct link actually after the thing. But you can find all the information about other classes and stuff that I've got going on during the month. You can find all of that information as well on. You can find it on my Instagram. Actually, I put a thing on there a few days ago about what's going to be happening during the rest of the month. There is a recording as well, so I've already done one class already on last Thursday, and that was about financial therapy and how to understand, why you might give away time or money and stuff like that. That's part of the financial therapy stuff that we're doing. But yeah, so tonight this Thursday we're doing this masterclass, and then next Thursday there's something else. But anyway, if you look on my Instagram, there's a complete breakdown. So Gloria is saying, one thing I'm working on is not internalizing inferiority around other races. So much deconstruction, honesty, and mindful awareness. The mastermind will be so helpful. Yeah, I mean that's it in a nutshell. That's it in a nutshell, because we do internalize a lot, and I think a lot of us are so used to internalizing, and it's something that we do unconsciously, because that's how the system operates. The system operates that, by default, according to the system, black people are defective. Okay. And by default, under the system, whiteness is, a white body is the supreme standard. White bodies are the supreme standard, as Reshma terms it, and black and brown bodies are defective. Anything outside of whiteness is defective, and we're deemed not human. So I think understanding all of those things, understanding how the system operates, understanding what you've internalized is really, really important, because we internalize all this stuff and we don't even realize that we're internalizing it. It's unconscious. We don't realize that we're doing it. And it's only when you start to do this work and you get around a community, a group of other people, where you begin to, you hear other people sharing their experience, you hear other people sharing what's going on in their body and what's going on for them, that things start to make sense for you, and you start to become more aware, rather than trying to escape your black body and the pain of being present. You start to become a lot more curious about what's going on in the body. Why is my body feeling like this? Why am I experiencing that? Why do these vibrations feel a certain type of way? And you'll understand. One of the things that one of my clients did tell me, actually, one of the reasons why she finds my mastermind quite useful is because she gets to understand how to name things. Because sometimes we experience things, but we can't articulate it. We can't articulate what's happening. But when you have a language to be able to say, oh, this is what is going on for me, this is what's happening inside my body, this is why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, then that curiosity and having this is where the intellect and the body work comes together. Yeah, the intellect and the body work comes together, and you just start to, it's so liberating. It's so liberating, just having that understanding and being able to see, okay, well, I can do something with this. This is a different level of self-care. This is a much deeper level of self-care, because it's not just, fluffy candles and having a bubble bath. It's not that. This is a deeper level of self-care, because you're really embodying and you're going much deeper with what you need to do in order to look after yourself. And like I said, these things that I'm going to teach on Wednesday are things, sorry, on Thursday. You can do them when you're in your own time, and you can do them in the group as well. So yeah, so if you're interested in joining me for the class on Thursday, it's 8 p.m. London time, and like I said, there will be a recording as well. You can just click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. Any issues about anything that I've shared about today, any questions about how to join the membership or anything at all, you can send me a DM, and we will talk about it. But yeah, honestly, this even if you can't join the membership, get this book, okay, and read it, because it is absolutely phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing, and there's so much to be learned from it. But again, if you can do it find a community to be able to do it, it's so much more powerful. And obviously, I'm as a trauma therapist, this is the absolute gift for me to be able to read this book, because he speaks to the black body. He speaks to obviously white people as well, and how racism impacts them. But just reading the book and attending the classes and stuff that I've been doing with him, it's just been absolutely phenomenal. And I'm learning so much about how my black body responds, inside systems of oppression. And that's where the power is. That's where the power is having that self-awareness and having that understanding, and using your body as a tool for healing, understanding what's going on in the body, and understanding what belongs to me, what doesn't belong to me, understanding what feels old and what feels current, all of these types of things. That's what happens when you start to increase your awareness around this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's fascinating. So yeah, hit me up if you've got any more questions or anything. You're welcome, Gloria. No, yeah, it's always great, seeing you as well. So I hope you're doing okay. So yeah, that's it for today. I've got a client now in 2 minutes, so I'm going to get off. But yeah, thank you for joining me today. And yeah, if you know somebody that you think might be interested in this session for the class on Thursday evening, please share it with them, tag them, let them know that, that there's this class happening on Thursday, which is an introduction to somatic abolitionism. All right. So hopefully I'll see you on Thursday. If not, I'll see you next time. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye. Thanks ever so much for joining. Bye bye.